Braves spring training is underway in Northport, Florida, as pitchers and catchers report, but there's a lot more players there. As I always like to say, the Braves, hey, they love baseball. These guys love balls. We saw Matt Olson, we saw Ronald Acuña, and Brian Snitker was on MLB TV today discussing the two stars that are returning from injuries. And one of them, Spencer Strider, sounds like, hey, he could probably go out there and give you 4 or 5 innings tomorrow. Brian Snitker said the ball's coming out really well. He's thrown several bullpens. I mean, almost a month ago, we were talking about he's already thrown 4 bullpens. So he's damn near where if the Braves needed to push him, if this was October, it feels like he'd be out on the mound on opening day. They're not going to do that. They don't need to do that. But I'm expecting to see him pitch a couple of games in spring training, pitch a couple of games on the farm in Gwinnett, and be ready by the end of April. I believe he will have made his start. First start.
Nobody should be surprised. I mean, with either of these injury updates, because they're obviously our 2 best players, Ronald Acuña and Spencer Strider. But more than that, they're not only the most physically talented players, they embody everything that the Atlanta Braves have been, from Chipper Jones to Freddie Freeman, just the love of the game. I mean, Spencer Strider's a nerd when it comes to like the mechanics, to all of the intricacies of pitching in the MLB. So nobody, and more than that, when you get some of these guys, some of these young kids, and you hear it all the time where they're like, yeah, I'm eating McDonald's and Wendy's. And I mean, hear about guys just eating candy. That's not Spencer Strider. Spencer Strider is not only mentally and physically taking him, he's doing everything else. So nobody should be surprised that he's ahead of the curve. And like you mentioned, everybody's expecting end of April, beginning of May, which is pretty much just you're looking at the back end of the rotation. That really feels like all the young guys. Well, I guess Grant Holmes isn't young, but Grant Holmes, Ian Anderson, or AJ Smith-Shawver. That's all you got, which is, depending if they're doing 6-man or 5-man, you only got like 4 or 5 starts before our ace comes back and you might be relegated. Some of those instances relegated to AAA, some of them out of Atlanta.
I don't even know if it'll be 4 or 5 starts because you're talking about, think about it, the 5th guy is pitching on like the 6th day of the season. You have a ton of off days early in the season, pretty much after every single one or single 2 series. So by the time that 5th starter, by the time he's making his 4th start, it's the end of April. So
not a long runway.
Yeah,
some of these guys.
So for sure, I think it wouldn't shock me. It's amazing, and you talk about the nerdy aspect of Spencer Strider. I mean, he also went the internal brace surgery route over Tommy John, which is new. It's an 8 to 12 month recovery time. You think back to when he underwent this surgery, it was middle of April. So he's at the end of that thing. Like this is a guy that the way he takes care of his body is damn near ready. And Ronald Acuña, it's going to be a little bit later. He's checking all the boxes, Brian Snitker says, but they're not, after this being a second ACL surgery, coming back and the way that he performed, having that discomfort, never really trusting it. That's a guy that I think you can expect much later in the season. And I know he's out there already hitting home runs, and Braves fans are like, he could go out there and play today. Well, yeah, he could go out there and hit.
DH.
He could go out there and hit if he didn't have to run to first base, run to second base, run to third base, steal bases, play in the outfield. So, yeah, he could still go out there and have the power, but there's a lot more that goes into his recovery that he hasn't even started yet, making cuts, Brian Snitker said in particular. So I think that's going to be a much slower recovery time, and I think middle of May, maybe after May, and hopefully no setbacks. But it wouldn't surprise me if they take things extremely slower with Acuña compared to Strider.
And when you look at the composition of this Braves team, where do we need help? Let's call a spade a spade. It's obviously we want Ronald Acuña back. He's the best player when healthy in baseball, bar none, in my opinion. Most talented, at least. Our pitching staff is the one that needs a little bit of help. Needs a little TLC. So Spencer Strider coming back is obviously more important to the Braves' immediate success, whereas Ronald Acuña Jr.'s overall health is more important to the long-term success, which is obviously postseason World Series. And when you look back at his first ACL, which was the other ACL, so he's now torn both ACLs, it was less than a year's time that he came back. It was less than a year's time. And while everybody's going, he is a freak. He's not like you and me. He had discomfort. He wasn't the same guy. Now, his down years are some guys' career years, like Aaron Rodgers likes to say. But we need Ronald Acuña Jr. at 100% if we want to raise the commissioner's trophy. It's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, it was disconcerting to see the way that he approached the game after that first ACL injury. And you could just tell. He would never say it, but you could just tell it wasn't the same guy.
He is the kind of player where coaches say you got to protect him from himself. He is that player where playing baseball brings him joy. It's his purpose in life, clearly, where you just got to say, just come on, you got to hold the horses back. And he is the perfect example of like, just protect him from himself. He'll thank you in the long run.
Yeah, and I think as he matures and going through it again, it was something that you heard out of his voice saying, I'm not going to rush it. Like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be 100%. And that's what we want to see later in the season. We want to see the guy that's the 40-70 guy, the guy that was the 2023 NL MVP. But very exciting news on both fronts for the Braves superstars, and they could be with the team much sooner than anticipated.